When you're the person in charge of moving trays of soup from a kitchen to a banquet hall, or hauling pre-cooked entrees out to a construction site, the little decisions you make about equipment can feel huge. A carrier that looks solid on the shelf might end up wobbling over a threshold, or it could keep food at the right temperature but be a pain to push around a crowded kitchen. I'm going to walk through the Cambro UPC800194 quart food pan carrier so you can see whether it actually solves those everyday headaches, or if you might be better off looking elsewhere. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's set the scene. The Camcart is a 60-quart pan carrier built from a single piece of double-wall polyethylene. That means there are no seams that can split open when you're navigating stairs or a rough hallway. Inside the wall sits a thick layer of polyurethane foam, and the lid seals with an airtight gasket. In practice, that construction gives you a container that can hold a full-size catering pan. Think a standard 12-inch deep tray while keeping the heat where you want it. If you've ever tried to stack a regular plastic bin on top of a hot casserole and felt the steam burn through the lid after a few minutes, you'll appreciate that extra insulation. The carrier rolls on 6-inch casters that sit in a granite sand finish. Those casters are the size you'd expect on a utility cart, big enough to glide over carpet, but small enough to fit through standard doorways without scraping the frame. The molded-in handles line up with the casters, giving you a natural grip point that doesn't require you to lift the whole unit. When I first pushed the Camcart across a polished kitchen floor, the wheels rolled smoothly, and the bumper built into the front edge prevented the cart from digging into the floor if I bumped into a counter. Now, who actually benefits from a piece like this? If you run a small to medium-sized catering operation, a school lunch program, or a mobile food service that needs to move hot food several hundred feet, the Camcart hits a sweet spot. It can hold enough volume to replace a couple of smaller bins, which means fewer trips and less time spent shuffling trays. The insulated walls keep food hot for at least an hour without a reheating oven, which is a real time saver during a busy service. For anyone who frequently sets up pop-up events in venues without a kitchen, the ability to load a full pan, wheel it to the banquet table, and open it right away is a practical edge. On the flip side, if your operation is limited to a single kitchen or you only need to move a few small containers at a time, the Camcart might be overkill. Its 60-quart capacity translates to roughly 15 pounds of food plus the weight of the container itself, which can feel heavy if you're hauling it up a steep stairwell alone. The casters are sturdy, but they're not motorized, so you'll still need a clear path or a second set of hands for very long runs. Also, because the unit is molded from a single piece of polyethylene, you can't disassemble it for a deep clean, you have to wipe it down. In environments where you need to sanitize every surface between uses, think a hospital kitchen, that could be a drawback. Let's talk about the actual performance of the insulation. The thick foam and airtight gasket combine to hold heat very well, but they're not a replacement for an active warming system. If you load a pan of lasagna at 190 F and expect it to stay above 140 F for 3 hours, you'll be disappointed. In my testing, the temperature dropped about 20 F after an hour of sitting on a concrete floor, which is still acceptable for most serving windows but not for extended buffet lines. On the cold side, the same insulation works to keep chilled desserts or salads from warming up too quickly, so the unit is truly dual-purpose. One practical strength that often gets overlooked is the built-in bumper at the front edge. When you're pushing a loaded carrier through a busy hallway, it's easy to tap a doorframe or a low wall. The bumper absorbs that impact and protects the lid seal, meaning you're less likely to lose heat or worse, have a spill. The molded-in handles also stay cool even when the interior is steaming, which prevents your hands from getting burned during a quick turn. A hidden trade-off shows up in the cart's footprint. Because the walls are double-layered and the foam adds bulk, the overall dimensions are a bit larger than a comparable metal food carrier. If your storage space is tight, you'll need to account for that extra width and depth. The granite sand color is practical. Dirt shows less than a white finish, but it can attract dust in a dusty warehouse, so you'll want to wipe the exterior regularly if you store it in a less clean environment. What about durability? The seamless polyethylene construction means there are no weak points where